Not one but two hot tubs.
Range Wilson.
The first step in escaping Annette's clutches was to find a second job. After an initial flurry of activity, it turned out Annette did not need me for that many hours as a personal assistant. So I decided to get back into personal training. I had several success stories from my previous stint as a personal trainer, and I had printed up a one sheet describing my approach. I was quickly hired by World Gym. My boss ended up being a young woman named Jen. She was a California dime, meaning she was a perfect 10 even by Hollywood standards. Jen was engaged to a young man named Ty, who clearly saw me as a threat to their relationship. Ty spent lots of time hanging around the gym, and every time he talked to me, he brought up the fact that he and Jen were engaged and living together, just in case I had forgotten since the last time we had talked. But I was through sleeping with my bosses after the drama with Annette and Denise. I kept things with Jen completely professional. The second step in escaping Annette's clutches was to find a new place to live. One ad caught my eye right away. This was a house that had a game room complete with pool table, a home theater, a swimming pool, and not one but two hot tubs, which doubled my chance for trouble. I responded to the ad, made an appointment, hit it off with everyone, and ended up moving into a Colorado Springs party house. The owner of the house was a guy named Tony. Tony had bought a whole bunch of Domino's pizza franchises back when the chain was first expanding into Colorado Springs. This turned out to be a wise move. The franchises pretty much ran themselves, and Tony was now a man of leisure. Unfortunately, he was also manic depressive. When I moved in, he was in one of his depressive phases and he never left his room. I saw him one time in the first 2 months I was living there. He smiled, waved, introduced himself, and then went straight back into his room. But after that, Tony entered a manic phase, and at that point he was a pleasure to be around. Tony shared the main floor of the house with a young man named J.D. J.D. was a delivery driver for Domino's Pizza. He was from a family of straight-up hillbillies. Most of his family still lived deep in the hills above Colorado Springs, but two of his siblings had moved down into Colorado Springs proper. One was his sister Jerusha, who was a college student. Another was his brother Josh, who was a frontman for a Christian thrash metal band. We managed to have a few adventures together. JD was unique in several ways, one of which was that he was stupid, but he knew it. Now, in my experience, most stupid people do not seem to realize that they are stupid. But JD realized that he was stupid, and that made him a pleasure to be around. Yvonne was the sweetheart of the house. She was a beautiful, curvy redhead with one of the brightest smiles I have ever seen and a personality to match. She was intelligent, charming, and fun. Unfortunately, she had gotten in a serious car accident a few years earlier that left her with ongoing physical and cognitive challenges. But she did not let those things slow her down. Yvonne owned a house in Fort Collins, Colorado, 2 hours north of Colorado Springs. She lived there with her fiancé Joe, but had decided to move down to Colorado Springs to open a auto body repair business. Joe stayed in Fort Collins, but came down frequently to visit. He was one of the most authentic people I've ever met. He also had an amazing ability to do impressions of any celebrity or mutual acquaintance you cared to name. Both Yvonne and Joe were pleasures to be around. Jason was an X-ray technician and high-functioning alcoholic. I don't think I ever saw Jason sober. He would go to work, inject people with radioactive dye all day long, go straight to the bar after work, drink all evening and night, come home around 2 or 3 a.m., get a few hours sleep, get up the next morning and do the whole thing all over again. One of Jason's secrets was that he would inject himself with an IV to rehydrate. This is not an approach I recommend for anyone. Even if you are an X-ray technician, if you inject yourself with an IV when you are drunk, you may be an alcoholic. Both last and least of the people sharing the house was a guy named Steve. Steve was a contractor working in construction, and unfortunately, he fulfilled just about every negative stereotype of a contractor. He had no charm whatsoever, but that did not stop him from talking. Worst of all, he was a slob, which is an unforgivable sin when you are sharing a house with 5 other people. On the bright side, Steve had a girlfriend of sorts, so he wasn't always around all that much. But when he was around, he was like a wet blanket, throwing himself on our fun. So that was the cast of characters for the real-life reality show that I had somehow fallen into. To find out what happened when Yvonne and I got naked in the hot tub, tune into my next episode of Life. Until then, like this video if you liked it, share on social media, leave a comment below, and most importantly, subscribe. My name is Range Wilson, and I'll see you next time.